Ladies and gentlemen, it is 20th of May 2017. Welcome to another edition of CBRCraft presented by Goldstream Gaming, in which we cast some local talent. Let us jump right on into the game. This is a Diamond TVZ. In the bottom right-hand corner, we do have our Red Terran player, D-Time Feel. In the top left-hand corner, we have our Blue Zerg player, KTZ Breakfast. Now then, as it is a Zerg versus Terran, Zerg really only has two... well, they've got a multitude of openers, of course, but there's really only two main options, which is Pool First or Hatch First. Hatch First is like quite safe against Terran, so if I suppose you're the kind of Zerg player who likes money, then do feel free to go Hatch First at all times. Having a look at the income tab, we can see the Pool First, which is very, very aggressive in comparison to Hatch First, of course. Now, I believe spawning pools cost... they cost 200 minerals, which does set back your expansion plans by quite a good few seconds. We do have the early scout from D-Time Feel, at around the time the barracks has gone down, so at about 17 supply. This is about the right time in which you can detect whether the pool has gone down first or the hatchery has gone down first, as by the time that this scouting SCV arrives at the natural, we will be able to see either, well, a hatchery or, in this case, no hatchery. So D-Time Field probably has an idea that something aggressive is going on. Looking at the D-Time Field cam, we don't necessarily see the pool just yet. Yes, we do. The completed pool is available, so D-Time Field does know that something aggressive is going on. Now the question is, how will he respond? There are 3 pairs of Zerglings coming right on out of here. D-Time Field responds with an engineering bay to block any upcoming expansions from KTZ Breakfast. That is actually a very, very good idea, as our engineering bays do have the highest HP of readily available Terran structures. That SCV does go down, but that engineering bay is at half health, which is pretty good. We do have a complete wall in here for D-Time Feel, fully aware that there are a whole lot of Zerglings coming on out. That poor drone is doing some long-distance mining as opposed to building any kind of hatchery. That is okay. We do have the Queen coming on out for Breakfast and does get that lava inject there. Not too bad there from KTZ Breakfast. Now, having a look at the unit counting station, we can see that there are about 8 Zerglings on the field, which is not quite as aggressive as you would expect out of a Pool First. If you're going to play this passive, I do recommend just going Hatchery first, as even with a Pool First, there's nothing that Terran can do to capitalize on that, as opposed to Hatch First, where Terran, again, can't really capitalize. Now, we do have a factory coming down for D-Time Feel, in addition to some infantry. We don't see any kind of bunker play from D-Time Feel, although that would be really optimal, I suppose. If Breakfast did play very, very aggressively, then he would be able to break this wall without too much incident. We should see like a Baneling nest for some kind of Baneling burst attack, and then these poor infantry would have no kind of defense, and instead a bunker would do very, very well. Now we do have the double hatch coming on out of Breakfast, which does spend his money quite efficiently, which is quite good for him. D-Time Feel is trying to get his natural. He's not totally certain what is out there. He is in fact not even aware of the Zerglings trying to bust down that wall, just to get that extra attempt at a surround on D-Time Feel's forces when he does attempt to move out. Returning to the everybody cam, we can see, of course, that we don't have enough queens. We don't have enough queens for all of these hatcheries. That said, Breakfast is spending his money very, very well, and wouldn't necessarily have the cash flow to produce extra queens. We do have full saturation on this main for breakfast, whereas we've had full saturation on the main and both gases for D-Time Fill for quite a while now. So if we had a look at the income tab, I do believe the income should be relatively even, despite the fact that Zerg is on 2 extra bases. It really does therefore make sense as Zerg to go hatch first at all times, unless you intend to be very, very aggressive, which breakfast has not been. That said, breakfast has shut down, I suppose, any sort of aggressive expansion for D-Time Fill, as D-Time Fill doesn't really have any idea what is out there on the field. Now, I did see a Roach Warren pop up, and we do also see an Evo Chamber popping up, which will do very, very well for breakfast's forces. It is always good to get upgrades. Upgrades are king in StarCraft 2 Legacy of the Void. Now, we do have that expansion coming right on out, floating over for D-Time Fill. Looking at the unit counting station, we can see that, yeah, because I'm great at finding the unit counting station, we can see that this small force of 6 Marines, 3 Cyclones, 2 Reapers will destroy 8 Zerglings. I suppose that means Breakfast was attempting for some kind of psychological warfare. He says, well, now you know that I have my pool first, so I am going to pretend to play aggressively, and instead I am just going to macro up behind this, which is actually very, very, very good on the part of Breakfast. Looking at the income tab, now we can see that Breakfast has pulled ahead in the income race. And will we see anything come on out of that is a good question. We do have armor coming on out for the Zerg forces first. We do have an Overlord elevator happening over here. That is 8 Zerglings coming right on into the main, completely unopposed. D-Time Fill's forces completely out of position. One goes down, 2 go down, 3, 4, 5 workers go down, and there were 2 more that obviously I didn't see, as 7 workers have been killed on the part of D-Time Fill. Not good at all. But that said, the military loss has evened itself on up. That said, looking at the income tab, we can see that D-Time Fill is very, very much struggling in this early game. With the workers returning on back to the main, I think that may be evened up soon enough, but this could be very well an insurmountable lead on the part of Breakfast. We do have a huge army pushing on up for D-Time Fill, ahead in the supply count, and the income has in fact evened up a little bit, which is quite good. We do have Reapers jumping on up that cliff. And that is a huge number of Zerglings, actually. So looking at the unit counting station, that is 36 Zerglings against not too many ranged units. If a full surround does happen, I do believe that Breakfast should be able to win this engagement. But D-Time Fill, does he know? Does he know about this this here expansion? The answer is yes. At least he's run into it about now. And chasing down that queen, excellent pull from Breakfast. I don't believe a single drone was lost in that attack on that 3rd base. Now, that was probably the worst tactical withdrawal I've seen in my life. We have these very tanky Cyclones out front, tanking the damage from the Zerglings. We have a huge number of Marines in the back, dealing all that sweet DPS, and that was one of the best possible engagements D-Time Fill could have hoped for, being able to hold a choke point using tanky units. Now, we do have a huge number of Zerglings being burst. If we look at the production tab, that is 22 Zerglings coming on up. A lot of them do get roasted from a bit of a bad rally on the part of this hatchery, but that is okay. We do have the pincer attack coming on down from Breakfast, but it is just not enough. That is far too many Marines. That is, from my count, 12 Marines, which does manage to take out this expansion. And if we look at the income tab, we can see the income has now evened up and is now in fact in D-Time Fill's favor, at least for now. We do have the natural and the main, which are still not quite at saturation for Breakfast. I do believe Breakfast should be droning up just a little bit more. That would help him out, as D-Time Fill has taken his 3rd. Absolutely a great principle. When you do win an attack, you should expand. Called the ETA concept, and I do believe these Cyclones may be lost. Reinforcements are coming in from the right for a pincer attack. One more queen might go down. It does get focused down, and that does quite well for D-Time Fill. as one queen between two queens between two hatcheries, so they should still be able to get off their lava injects, which is quite good. Both players banking up a fairly large bank at the moment. 900 minerals and a fair amount of gas for Breakfast. I do believe that means Breakfast could invest, could probably invest in the second Evo chamber, as he does have Zerg weapons coming on up. He does have a Baneling nest going for some kind of Baneling attack, which will do quite well for him. Having a look at the units lost tab, that is, of course, Zerglings are very, very cheap in comparison to Marines, so the number of units going down doesn't mean too much. But the resources tell a completely different story, as it's pretty much even in terms of damage having been dealt to both sides. That said, the loss of an expansion has hurt Breakfast quite a bit. A 700 income lead for D-Time Feel. Doesn't even need to produce that many units. It doesn't really matter producing too many workers, as he does have 4 bases at the moment, producing his 4th, which is quite good. That is a good spend of money to produce additional bases. Having a look at the production tab, we can see, I suppose, a bunch of upgrades for Zerg, which is quite good for him. He does have a Spire coming on up, which is always very good. If you suspect that your opponent has gone mostly ground units, in this case Cyclones, then it does make sense to get out some Mutalisks. Does Breakfast actually know? Does he see where the army of D-Time Feel is? The answer is no. They are hiding in these bushes just out of sight. Quite sneaky there from D-Time Feel. We do have an Overseer just kind of sitting around checking for any cloaked units, because Terran has some excellent cloaked units. Absolutely. An Overlord coming on up. Will that be some elevator action is the real question. We do have some Widow Mines going on down. This Marina walking on out to try and lure some Zerglings. Doesn't lure enough. The friendly fire from that Widow Mine probably does more harm than good. But I don't think any Terran units were lost in that engagement. So that was an okay pick on the part of D-Time Feel. About 200 minerals worth of pick. Returning to the income tab, D-Time Feel's income has, well, his economy has just gotten absolutely massive. Could probably do with saturating these refineries. It does saturate the refineries at the 3rd, hasn't constructed refineries at the 4th, and should probably build an orbital command with his 600 banked up minerals. On the topic of banked up, we can see 1,000 Vespene gas banked up for Breakfast at the moment. He probably should be building Mutalisks. Looking at the production tab, we can't see any Mutalisks coming out just yet, but that does just mean that he will have 11 Mutalisks coming on out when he decides to do so, which will do quite well for him. We do see the 4th base coming on down for Breakfast, which is pretty good, as at about the 10-minute mark, most mains should be approaching mined out. Right now, there's still about 2,000 minerals remaining at the main of Breakfast, and at the main of D-Time Feel, nowhere near that much. This is just about to be mined out. It is a huge ball, including some Medivac support for D-Time Feel at the moment, and not quite so big a ball for Breakfast. Returning to the unit counting station, it is really only 29 Zerglings and 10 Banelings versus 10 Cyclones, well, 7 Cyclones and 30 Marines. That will do very well for D-Time Feel if he does decide to push on in. And we shall see just how that pans out as the push is happening. Looking at the unit composition, that's pretty good. We do have the Cyclones in the front, which should absorb these Baneling blasts quite well, but not enough. That is a massive payoff for those Banelings. If we return to the units lost tab, D-Time Feel is currently behind in the units lost, but he does have some Widow Mines, which he is hoping to lure the opponent's Zerg units into. Those Mutalisks do go down. There are 2 remaining Mutalisks on the map, and still a huge amount of banked up resources for both Breakfast and D-Time Feel, actually. These Widow Mines will get cleaned up on courtesy of that Overseer. And returning to the units counting station, there is pretty much nothing on the map remaining for the Terran player. The Zerg player does have 24 Zerglings, 4 Roaches, 2 Mutalisks, which is enough to do actually quite a decent amount of damage. This Widow Mine just getting off that nice shot there, but that won't work out too well. No, not too much will come out as a result of that. We do have 2 Mutalisks here, which will be able to do massive damage to this 3rd base, as it is completely undefended. D-Time Feel's army is completely out of place. And well, he is attempting to reinforce that base. It will not actually go down, so that was some excellent harass from Breakfast right there. What on earth did I just press? I literally went back to the very start of the game. That is some high quality play right there. Let's quickly speed on through this. There is the attack into the third, and there is the reinforce and the retreat on the part. Did I do that again? That is the worst hotkey ever, because it's right next to the workers killed tab, which is what I was really looking for. 9 workers killed on the part of Breakfast. Absolutely excellent attack there for not having lost too much. That said, he does lose those Mutalisks to the Terran army. Now, currently looking at the supply differential, D-Timefeel is in the lead by about 40 supply, which is absolutely massive. That said, 73 workers for D-Timefeel. That is an absolutely enormous amount of workers. Terran usually can stop at about 60 workers. 77 is, I suppose, just expecting to lose some to the enemy, which, considering the sheer amount of piled up gas and the sheer number of air units, Mutalisks available to Breakfast, I suppose that's not the worst possible choice right there. That said, Terran has lost more overall, and despite the income lead for Terran, I'm not sure that'll be too much. That said, the supply gap is widening, sitting at about a 50 supply gap right now for D-Timefeel. That will work out quite well for him. We do have some scans going on down, and he does see that 4th base, which is fully populated, and does start marching on towards it. The response of Breakfast is, of course, to just go ham with some air attacks. I'm not certain that is the best idea. That said, these liberation zones go down, deny some mining. That income should drop quite dramatically for Breakfast. Looking at the workers lost tab, that is 2 down on the part of Breakfast. Probably not worth losing like 5 liberators, but whatever one can do for an advantage, and that is quite a big income advantage on the part of D-Timefeel at the moment. The Breakfast workers returning back to work. That will do quite well for him. This wall does go down, and D-Timefeel very well could just march on in here, as there's not too much defending on the part of Breakfast. We only have a single Ravager and not too many Banelings, so I believe this should be a relatively decent push on the part of D-Timefeel. +2/+1 upgrades versus the same on the Zerglings. We do have these Widow Mines going on down, but I do expect, yes indeed, Breakfast spots it and none of these Widow Mines go off. That is not the best engage on the part of D-Timefeel. We have a Battle Cruiser coming on down. When did I see that Fusion Core go down for D-Timefeel? There it is. And looking at the production tab, therefore, we may very well see a transition to mass battle cruisers. We see them being produced 3 at a time. We have a Nidus Worm coming on up just to bring reinforcements back to the front, or perhaps a psychological warfare, as we may see. Now, D-Timefeel is completely maxed out. There's no reason he shouldn't just push in here. Doesn't matter if he loses some units, as he has a huge amount of money banked on up, and that could do quite well for him. Now, we do have the air detachment of Breakfast. The sheer amount of scans that just went down all over the map does imply that psychological warfare did quite work out for Breakfast. Now, he does have an air attack coming on towards the 3rd, which leaves the 4th free for D-Timefeel to come on in and attack. And the liberation zones are going down. They will do a decent amount of damage, I suppose. But this Marine army just got completely cleaned on up, and there's not too much left on the map aside from battle cruisers on the part of D-Timefeel. Breakfast quite efficiently closing that supply gap. Now, we do have these Widow Mines coming on up, which may be able to do something if D-Timefeel has the spare ABM to borrow them. Burrowing doesn't quite happen just yet, but that is okay, as there is an attack here at the 5th of D-Timefeel, bringing him on down to 6th, as there is the 5th, bringing him down to 5 bases versus 4, which is still quite good. Looking at the income tab, we can see a massive advantage in the part of D-Timefeel, at least in terms of minerals. Now, we do have about 3 battle cruisers here, just doing a little bit of harassment, which is quite good. It is always good to harass your opponent when they have a huge advantage. Just keep them multitasking. is always good. Now, we do have a good Widowmine hit coming from these Widowmines hidden in the bushes, which should blunt the attack of these Zerglings as they do come on in to the 5th base. Should be able to kill quite a few SCVs if we look at the units lost tab. 20 workers killed on the part of Breakfast. That is going to completely clean this base up. Poor D-Time field. That is a lot of workers lost. Returning to the income tab, actually, the income gap has therefore closed right on up, and in fact may be favoring Breakfast soon enough. Now there is the air army of Breakfast, which is coming on down to the 3rd base, I suppose, which still hasn't quite mined out yet, most likely as a result of having been attacked by air units previously. Now we have another Nidus Worm coming on up, just to help reinforce in the north for Breakfast. That said, there is still a supply gap, and that supply gap is made up entirely of battle cruisers, if memory serves correctly. Yes, that is 6 battle cruisers on the part of D-Time field. Now, I feel like this is a misuse of the infestation pit. We can see 9 swarm hosts, which should do quite well, I suppose, with this remote deployment point for these Nidus worms. And should be able to do some damage to the 3rd base, which would be quite good. But that said, I suppose against a Terran that just has so much money, you can expect just such a huge army. Look at this. That is 2 pages of Marines. And I suppose infestors with fungal growth would do a lot better out of the infestation pit as opposed to these swarm hosts. That said, the swarm hosts do drop their load, and I think this 3rd base could be in a lot of trouble at the moment. They're barely at half duration, and although the base lifts up, these workers are lost. Still, 60 workers remaining. I suppose the foresight of building 70 plus workers was a good idea on the part of D-Time field. Now these gas geysers do go down, so this base is completely naked. That said, that is a huge army heading on up there, and there is additionally another Nidus Worm coming on down. Does D-Time field see it? Returning the D-Time field cam, the answer is quite possibly yes, as we do see the units walking on down towards where the Nidus is about to pop out. And that should do quite well. We have an Ultralisk in there, so these workers would be doomed, except for the timely arrival of just so many Marines. These Marines are at 2-1, which, with Battlecruiser support, does mean that this Ultralisk goes down quite quickly. So do those Swarm Hosts, and the attack is averted. That said, that pulled workers for so long. Now here comes the air army of Breakfast, and that might do well against that planetary fortress, except of course for the timely arrival of literally the entire Terran army. We may see indeed some A moving there from D-Time field, who does still have an income advantage, and that is still quite good for him. He could pick off this Overlord, I suppose, to attempt to supply block Breakfast, but instead just goes for this air army. 1 Yamato cannon getting triggered, none of these others. I do feel like that battle could have been a lot more decisive had the Yamato cannons gone off slightly earlier into the fight. That Swarm Host goes down to Widow Mines, and so do a couple of Zerglings as the attack comes right on into the 5th base. We do have Swarm Host performing a multi-pronged attack, taking on down some missile turrets, and that should do quite well for him. We do have these Yamato cannons coming on out and completely destroying these Ultralisks. There's just not too much left there on the part of Breakfast. This orbital command will go down, but at the cost of Breakfast's entire army. The D-Time field is still maxed out on units. So rebuilding the base would of course be good. That said, there are 2,000 gas banked up for Breakfast. I do feel like he could be spending his money a little bit more efficiently. That Overseer not quite going down to the Widow Mines, but these Queens are so slow off creep, they will get caught up and destroyed. We do have a 60 supply gap in favor of D-Time field. Now we do have some Corruptors coming on down, and I do believe they will be using Caustic Spray, which deals a significant amount of damage and should be able to take down this planetary fortress without too much incident. That said, the entire Terran army is coming to reinforce. Will they be able to do anything? That is the real question. The answer is quite maybe, as these Corruptors do start to retreat, but they run straight into the Battlecruiser line. Will we see the Yamato cannons coming on down? The answer is no. D-Time field just not quite having the micro, not quite having the APM to do so. That said, we do have the Swarm Host coming on up. I suppose they are getting their value for money in terms of harassing the economy of D-Time field, but D-Time field has stayed maxed out. D-Time Field has stayed maxed out for well over 2 minutes by now. This PF will go down unless some repairing action happens. Yes, one SCV does repair as those swarm hosts expire. Now we do see a massive engagement at the third base of Breakfast. We do have these Ultralists which just go down to +3 Marines. Those Yamato cannons not even having to be used on any Ultralisks. Now, this fourth base will go down. This third base is kind of doomed as well. Breakfast is sitting on 80 supply, down 100 supply to D-Time Field. This very well could be GG, as the fourth does go down, and so does the third base. We do have the reinforcing Corruptors on the last-ditch attack, but Yamato Cannon is available. Come on, D-Time. There we go. There go the Yamato cannons. A huge number of Corruptors all go down to those massive explosions. There's just not much left on the part of Breakfast. He is down to less than 60 supply and leaves the game not even a GG. There is a good rage quit from Breakfast in this long 21-minute game of StarCraft 2 Legacy of the Void. Now, gsreplays@gmail.com. Please send your replays regardless of what game they are, as I will attempt to cast things that I do not understand. And indeed, see you guys next time.